Ethan Miller never planned to become anyone's babysitter. He had just moved to Maple Hill, a quiet town in Oregon where the rain came often, and the neighbors smiled politely but kept their distance. He worked from home as a freelance graphic designer, spending most of his days behind a computer screen. His life was steady but lonely, the kind of loneliness that crept in quietly, without reason. When Claire Dawson from next door knocked on his door one Friday evening, everything began to change in ways he couldn't have imagined. Claire was in her early 30s, graceful, but clearly tired. She introduced herself quickly, apologizing for the sudden request. Her voice was calm yet rushed. "I'm sorry to bother you, Ethan. My sitter canceled last minute, and I've got a hospital shift tonight. I heard you work from home. Would you be willing to watch my daughter for a few hours? I'll pay, of course." Ethan hesitated. He had never babysat before, but saying no to someone who looked that desperate didn't feel right. "Sure," he said after a short pause. "What's her name?" "Lily," Claire said with a small, grateful smile. "She's 6. She's shy at first, but she warms up quickly. Thank you, really." And just like that, Ethan's quiet Friday night turned into something unexpectedly meaningful. When he walked into Claire's home for the first time, it felt lived in. Not perfect, not fancy, but warm. There were children's drawings on the fridge, a faint scent of vanilla candles, and the soft hum of a washing machine in the background. Lily stood by the couch clutching a stuffed bunny, watching him carefully, her big blue eyes full of curiosity. "Hi, Lily," he said gently, kneeling down to her level. "Your mom said I'll be hanging out with you tonight." She nodded but didn't say anything. Ethan smiled, trying again. "Do you like cartoons?" Her eyes brightened a little. "Paw Patrol," she said quietly. "Then Paw Patrol it is." They spent the first hour watching cartoons, while Ethan sat on the floor beside her, answering her random questions about dogs and superheroes. Slowly, she began to trust him. By dinner, she was chatting about her school friends and showing him her favorite drawings. She told him her mom worked a lot, and sometimes forgot to rest, but that she always kissed her goodnight, even when she was too tired to talk. When Ethan made her macaroni and cheese, she said, "Mom makes it better." He laughed. "I'm sure she does. I'm still learning." After dinner, he helped her brush her teeth and read her a bedtime story about a rabbit who wanted to touch the moon. She fell asleep halfway through, the stuffed bunny tucked under her arm. For the first time in a while, Ethan felt something calm settle inside him, a sense of belonging he didn't know he had been missing. It was nearly midnight when Claire returned. Ethan was sitting on the couch scrolling through his phone, the sound of rain tapping softly against the window. She looked exhausted, her dark hair tied up in a messy bun, her scrub slightly wrinkled. But there was a light in her eyes when she saw Lily sleeping soundly in her room. "You got her to sleep?" she whispered, almost surprised. He nodded, smiling. "Took a few stories, but she's out like a light." Claire sighed with relief and leaned against the doorframe for a moment, rubbing her neck. "You have no idea how much this helps me. It's been hard finding someone reliable. I work night shifts every weekend." "No problem at all," Ethan said. "Lily's great. You're lucky." Claire smiled faintly. "I know. She keeps me going." For a moment there was silence. Not awkward, but gentle. The kind that makes you notice the small details. The way rain streaked the window, the soft hum of the fridge, the tired gratitude in her voice. Ethan could tell she wasn't someone who asked for help easily. She carried herself with quiet strength, the kind that comes from doing everything alone for too long. He stood to leave, but she stopped him at the door. "Please, take this." She handed him some cash, but he shook his head. "Really, it's fine," he said. "You don't have to. I insist," she said, her tone kind but firm. "You helped me tonight. That means more than you think." Ethan hesitated, then accepted it. "All right, but only if you promise to call me again if you need help." "I don't mind." She looked at him, a little surprised. "You'd do that?" "Sure," he said simply. "I like spending time with Lily. She's fun." Claire smiled. A real one this time, soft and grateful. "Then I might take you up on that." "Thank you, Ethan. Really." As he walked back home through the rain, Ethan felt something unfamiliar, a quiet warmth in his chest. He couldn't stop thinking about the tired look in Claire's eyes, the way she smiled even when she was clearly exhausted, and the small home that somehow felt more alive than his own apartment. The next morning, he found himself glancing out his window toward her house, wondering how her shift had gone. He didn't know why he cared so much. Maybe because he saw something in her life that he hadn't had in years. Purpose, connection, even struggle. It all felt real in a way his life hadn't for a long time. A few days later, he was in his kitchen when his phone buzzed. It was a message from Claire. "Hey, it's Claire. I'm working again this Saturday night. Any chance you're free to babysit?" Ethan stared at the message for a few seconds, smiling to himself before replying. "Of course, same time?" "Yes, thank you again. You're a lifesaver." That Saturday, when he knocked on her door, Claire greeted him with the same soft smile. But this time, she didn't look quite as hesitant. Lily ran to the door and hugged his leg, her laughter filling the hallway. And just like that, what began as a one-time favor became something else entirely. Something steady, familiar, and quietly important. By the third weekend, Ethan had become a familiar part of the Dawson home. Lily no longer waited shyly by the door when he arrived. She ran straight into his arms with that bright laugh only children have. Her trust came easily now, and with it, a rhythm began to form. Friday evenings meant movies and pancakes. Saturday afternoons meant board games and long walks to the park. But what Ethan hadn't expected was how natural it began to feel. Like stepping into a life that was never his but somehow fit perfectly. Claire, on the other hand, still carried her quiet distance. She was always polite, always grateful, but there was something in her eyes that said she wasn't used to leaning on anyone. She would rush out to her hospital shifts with a coffee in hand, her hair tied neatly back, her tone calm but hurried. Yet every time she came home, no matter how tired she was, she'd peek into Lily's room first, check on her, and then look toward Ethan with a soft, thankful smile that said more than words could. One evening, while Lily drew on the living room floor, Ethan found himself tidying the kitchen just to pass the time. There were notes on the fridge, grocery lists, reminders for bills, a school calendar filled with colorful stickers. Everything about Claire's life seemed organized yet stretched thin. She was managing so much alone. That quiet strength of hers fascinated him. He respected it deeply, but it also made him worry for her, though he barely knew her. When Claire came home that night, she found the dishes done, the living room cleaned, and her daughter asleep. "You didn't have to do all that," she said softly, her voice touched by surprise. "I know," Ethan replied, smiling. "But you looked like you could use a break." She leaned against the counter, rubbing her temples. "Sometimes I forget what a break even feels like." Then, as if realizing how much she'd said, she quickly added, "Sorry, that sounded ungrateful. I'm just tired." "It's okay," Ethan said gently. "You don't have to explain. You work hard. Anyone would be tired." For a moment she looked at him, really looked, and Ethan saw something in her expression that stayed with him, a mix of exhaustion and quiet gratitude. It wasn't romantic, not yet, but it was real. It was human, and it made his heart ache in a way he couldn't name. The following weekends followed a similar rhythm. The house, once just a place he visited, began to feel familiar. Lily would show him her drawings, always of her mom, and now, Mr. Ethan. Claire would sometimes leave a note on the counter with a snack for him, usually something simple like a muffin or tea. The gestures were small, but they mattered. They built something between them, something that wasn't planned. One Saturday afternoon, Lily insisted they bake cookies together. The kitchen became a mess of flour, sugar, and laughter. When the cookies came out slightly burned, Ethan told her they were crispy style, and she giggled so much that she hiccuped. That evening, when Claire returned home, the smell of burnt cookies filled the air, and Lily proudly presented one to her. "Mom, look. We made these." Ethan said they're fancy. Claire took a bite, made a funny face, then laughed. A real laugh, full and bright, the kind Ethan hadn't heard before. Fancy, huh? I like that word for it. Her laughter stayed in Ethan's mind long after he went home that night. It had been so long since he'd felt such warmth from anyone, and it lingered in the quiet of his apartment like a song he couldn't stop humming. One evening, after putting Lily to bed, Claire came home earlier than usual. She dropped her bag on the counter and sighed, the kind of sigh that comes from weeks of carrying too much. Ethan handed her a cup of tea he had made, unsure if it was the right thing to do. Thanks, she said, wrapping her hands around the mug. You're full of surprises, you know that. He smiled. Just trying to keep the boss happy, she laughed softly. If only the people at work were this thoughtful. Then her tone grew quieter. Sometimes I wonder how long I can keep all of this going, the LO. Autumn came slowly that year, painting the small town in warm shades of gold and red. The air carried the smell of rain and the sound of leaves crunching underfoot. Ethan's weekends at Claire's house had become a steady part of his life, something he looked forward to more than he wanted to admit. What started as a small favor had turned into the most meaningful hours of his week. Hours that filled the quiet spaces of his heart he didn't know were empty. Lily had grown even closer to him. She'd greet him every Saturday morning with messy hair and bright eyes, holding her stuffed bunny like a badge of honor. They would make pancakes, build forts, and fill the house with laughter. But every time Claire came home from work, Ethan's attention shifted. He'd watch her step inside, hair damp from the rain, her hospital badge still hanging around her neck. She'd smile softly, say thank you, and those few words were always enough to make him forget how tired he was. One October evening, the rain was heavier than usual. The streets shimmered under the streetlights as Ethan helped Lily finish her homework. She was drawing a picture of her family, her mom, and Mr. Ethan. When she showed it to him, his heart tightened a little. Mom says you're part of our team now, Lily said proudly. He smiled but didn't know how to respond. There was warmth in her words, but also something heavier. Being part of their world meant more to him than it should have, and that scared him a little. That night, Lily fell asleep early. The rain outside had a soft rhythm that made the whole house feel calm. Ethan tidied the toys, folded a small blanket, and looked at the clock. Claire would be home soon. He made tea, one for himself and one for her, just as he had started doing every Saturday night. When the door opened, she stepped in, brushing raindrops from her hair. Her coat was damp, and she looked both tired and relieved to be home. You made tea again, she said with a small smile. It's becoming a habit, he replied. You always look like you need it. She laughed softly and took the cup from him. You're not wrong. They sat at the kitchen table, the sound of rain filling the silence between them. The light above them was warm and dim, giving the room a peaceful glow. They talked like they often did, about Lily, about work, about how Claire hadn't taken a real vacation in years. But that night, something was different. There was no rush in her voice, no distance in her eyes. It felt like, for once, she allowed herself to slow down. I used to dream of opening a bakery, Claire said suddenly, smiling at her own memory. When I was younger, I thought life would be simple. Flour on my hands, music playing, maybe my daughter running around the counter. But life had other plans. Do you miss it? Ethan asked. Sometimes, she said. But I don't regret where I am. Lily is my everything. I just wish, sometimes, that I didn't have to do it all alone. Ethan looked at her, wanting to say something but unsure what would be right. Finally, he said quietly, You're not alone, Claire. Not really. Their eyes met across the table. It wasn't dramatic, no music, no sudden realization, just a calm understanding. Something unspoken passed between them, something that felt safe yet powerful. Claire looked down, tracing the rim of her teacup with her finger. You've been good for her, you know, she said softly. Lily adores you. She hasn't laughed this much in years. She's a great kid, Ethan replied, trying to steady his voice. She makes it easy, Claire smiled. You've been good for me too. He didn't know what to say. The words hung in the air, soft but heavy, like the rain outside. He wanted to tell her that she'd been good for him too, that her house, her kindness, Even her tired smile had become his favorite part of life. But he stayed quiet. Instead, he helped her clean up the kitchen. Their hands brushed once when they both reached for the same dish towel, and for a split second, neither of them moved. They both laughed it off, but the moment stayed. It wasn't about romance or longing. It was about connection. Something real, something honest. Later that night, as Ethan prepared to leave, Claire walked him to the door. The rain had stopped, and the street outside was quiet. "Drive safe," she said softly, holding the door open. "I will," he replied. "Try to get some rest." "I'll try," she said, smiling faintly. "And Ethan, thank you for everything. You've made things a little easier lately." He nodded, not trusting himself to say more. "Anytime." As he stepped out into the cool night, he turned back once. Claire was still standing by the doorway, watching him with that gentle, tired smile. For a moment, he thought about what it would be like to stay, to not go home to an empty apartment, to sit in that warm kitchen a little longer, to be part of something that felt whole. But he didn't. He just gave her a small wave and walked away. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. The image of her standing by the door wouldn't leave his mind. He told himself he was just being sentimental, that he was reading too much into simple kindness. But deep down he knew it was more than that. It wasn't about attraction or loneliness. It was about finding a place where he finally felt seen. The next weekend, Claire invited him to stay for dinner. It was something she'd never done before. Lily insisted on setting the table herself, while Claire cooked pasta and garlic bread. It was a small thing, but it felt like home. Laughter, clinking forks, small talk about Lily's school play. When Claire laughed that evening, Ethan realized how much he wanted to keep hearing that sound. After dinner, while Lily played in her room, Claire poured 2 cups of coffee and sat beside him on the couch. "You've become part of our little world," she said. "It's strange how quickly it happened. Do you mind?" Ethan asked softly. She shook her head. "No, I think I needed someone like you more than I realized." The air felt still after that. The distance between them seemed smaller, the silence filled with meaning. When he left later that night, Claire walked him to the door again. "Good night, Ethan," she said, her voice calm but gentle. "Good night." "Claire," he replied, as he stepped into the cool air. He realized something simple but certain. He didn't just care about this family. He belonged to them, in a quiet way that had nothing to do with blood or promises. And though he never said it out loud, Ethan knew one truth he couldn't ignore anymore. He didn't stay for the money or the routine. He stayed because every time he saw Claire, tired, kind, and strong, he saw the life he'd always hoped to find. Winter arrived early that year, wrapping Maple Hill in frost and soft white mornings. The days grew shorter and the nights colder, but Ethan's weekends at Claire's house never lost their warmth. By now, he was more than a babysitter. He was part of their small world. Lily treated him like family, and Claire no longer looked at him like a neighbor doing her a favor. She looked at him like someone she trusted, someone she relied on. Even when she didn't say it out loud, Ethan could feel how natural everything had become. Helping Lily with her school projects, fixing a leaky faucet, shoveling snow off Claire's porch. He did it without thinking, without expecting anything in return. Each small act drew him closer to them, and though he told himself it was just kindness, deep down he knew it was more. One Saturday afternoon, the 3 of them decorated the Christmas tree. Lily was in charge of hanging ornaments, though most of them ended up clumped together on one side. Claire laughed as she tried to fix it, and Ethan stood back, watching them both. The house glowed with a kind of peace that he hadn't felt in years. After Lily went to bed, Ethan helped Claire clean up. She poured them each a cup of hot chocolate and turned on soft music. They sat by the tree, the lights reflecting in their eyes. "You've made this season better," Claire said quietly. "Usually it's just me trying to make everything perfect for Lily. But this year, I don't feel so alone." Ethan's chest tightened at her words. "You're not alone," he said softly. "Not anymore." For a long moment, they didn't speak. The silence was warm, filled with understanding. It wasn't about confession or expectation, just comfort. Two people who had found peace in each other's company. The weeks passed gently. Snow fell, the holidays came and went, and Ethan's connection to Claire and Lily deepened. Sometimes he'd stay a little longer after putting Lily to bed, helping Claire fold laundry or simply talking over cups of tea. They shared stories about childhood, dreams that never happened, and the strange ways life could hurt and heal at the same time. One night, Claire showed him an old photo album, pictures of her younger self, her husband, and baby Lily. Her voice trembled a little when she said, "He was a good man. We were happy. I just didn't expect it to end so soon." Ethan listened quietly, his heart heavy. "You've done an incredible job, Claire," he said. "Lily's lucky to have you." She smiled faintly, closing the album. "Sometimes I feel like I've spent so long surviving that I forgot what it's like to just live." He didn't say anything, but his expression said enough. She saw it. The kindness in his eyes, the patience, the quiet care that never asked for anything. As winter turned to spring, small changes began to bloom between them. Claire laughed more often. She started baking again, sometimes bringing Ethan cookies wrapped in napkins when he left. Lily called him our weekend hero, and Ethan, without meaning to, found himself thinking about them even during the week, imagining the smell of Claire's coffee, the sound of Lily's laughter echoing through the small house. One evening, as they watched Lily perform in her school play, Claire,